In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, my brother James called me earlier today telling me that he had an agenda that he wanted to push. And in this episode, James is going to explain why he believes that the success of Alperen Şengün and the Houston Rockets should ease all the concerns teams have about Derik Queen. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, along with my brother and my co-host, James Barlowe. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And also, before we get into this episode, I want to tell you about the Locked On newsletter. Check it out at lockedondaily.com. Whichever team you support, whether it is the Memphis Grizzlies, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Denver Nuggets, the Lakers, the Wolves, your favorite team has a newsletter at lockedondaily.com. It is your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. So check it out at Locked On Daily. So whether your team is in the playoffs or preparing for the draft, check it out. And also, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode, because we are coming at you every single day, sometimes twice a day, and sometimes 3 times per day. This is my third podcast of the day, but only 2 were posted, and this will post early Friday morning. So I got this call from James. It's like, yo, Raf, I got this agenda to push, man. I got to get it off my chest. If you are a new listener, James is a huge Derik Queen fan. He's a big believer in Derik Queen. And James is here to share his agenda about Derik Queen and why he believes that teams should look at Alperen Şengün and see his success, or believe that Derik Queen can have similar success. So, James, tell me why you felt like you needed to get this off your chest.
Well, like you mentioned before, Ralph, I am one of the movers of the Derik Queen movement. And I know that people have concerns about Derik Queen. Real quick, Derik Queen, 6'10", 245-pound freshman, finished the season at 16 points, 9 rebounds, almost 2 assists a game at Maryland. I believe Maryland went to the Sweet 16 this year. He capped it off. He had a big shot, game-winning shot against Colorado State. So I'm a big believer in Derik Queen. He isn't your run and dunk big as a Common Malawach or a Sanul, who you're going to also see in this draft. Derik Queen is I don't even want to call it, I can't box him in as a back to the basket big, but he is a big with post-game, face-up game. He can handle, he rebounds, he can pass, he can do a little bit of everything. But it seems to a lot of people, they don't know what position he plays at the next level. And also, he doesn't really stretch the floor. So it's like, what can he do? And then also, like at Maryland, he played next to another big. So people have questions, and he's not a shot blocker. You know, it was big old T-shirt, not exactly the most cut-up fellow, but I don't care about those things. I'm a big Derik Queen fan. I've mentioned plenty of times before that I think that he's the most offensively skilled player in the draft as far as just being able to do so many different things. And I've been here for a while. I know ESPN released their mock, or Big Board, excuse me. They had him in the top 10. I've had him in my top 10 this whole time. So I called you up, Ralph. I was like, you know what? It just hit me. Just in case anybody still has any doubts about my man Derik Queen, I got some agendas to push, and I feel like I got some facts to back it up. So here we go.
All right, so let's get into some of the doubts and concerns. Like when I hear people talk about Derik Queen, they say he's not a great athlete. They say that he's not a good defender. He's not a good rim protector. If you look at the numbers, he's a better shot blocker and rim protector than he's given credit for. But you hear a lot of concerns about fit, never the talent, never the skill level, but again, a lot of concerns about fit. In your opinion, Are those concerns valid? And then what are your personal concerns? I mean, we've heard you talk about how much you like him, but what are some of your personal concerns?
I feel like the defensive, I mean, if you just hone in on the shot blocking and, if you have it in your mind that you want your big to be a rim protector, then I get those concerns. I wish he blocked more shots, but I don't have questions about his fit because, again, I feel like he's so talented. He does so many different things well. I think that you are doing yourself as an organization, coach, franchise, whatever, a disservice if you try to box him in and say, well, he's not a high flyer or he's not your prototypical rim runner. So why would I draft him? And I'm telling you, you should draft him if you have a need at the 5 position, because on offense, I feel like he can be an offensive hub at the next level. My concerns, again, blocking shots. He does play standing straight up at times, but I do feel like even though he isn't your prototypical rim running big, I do think he has the footwork and athleticism to be an effective defender, considering he's going to play below the rim for the majority of his career.
Yeah, he averaged 1.1 blocks per game. I mean, you look at the stats, 2.2 stocks. Not terrible. I mean, the way people describe it, sometimes you make it would just seem like he just offers zero rim protection and zero defense. I just think that he's one of the more gifted and skilled bigs in this class. I don't know if I have him number one. I think I may lean a little bit towards Maxime Reynaud as far as skill. I mean, Maxime Reynaud made like 60-something threes this year. He averaged 20 and 10. And even though Reynaud is a senior and Queen is a freshman, I don't even think they're like 18 months apart in age. But anyway, back to Derik Queen. He averaged 1.9 assists per game, and I think that number does not really reflect how good of a passer he is. The first time I saw Derik Queen play, I think it was like Montverde versus Sunrise Christian. He may have been a sophomore or junior in high school, and he absolutely dominated that game with his passing, the rebounding, the touch, and just the overall offensive skill. And then here we are 3 years later. I personally enjoy watching just because of what he brings to the table on the offensive end. And there aren't many doubts about what he brings on the offensive end, but there are some doubts about fit and how it scales up to the NBA. Because in today's NBA, bigs are kind of put in boxes. You got your guy that is supposed to anchor your defense. You have your stretch fives. Then you have your guys that are hubs, but usually those guys that are hubs are very, very gifted scorers, but also good passers. He has the skill where if you give him the ball on the block, he's got work. If you double, he has the feel and the vision to be able to pick double teams apart, find cutters, and he is a guy that I think is eventually going to be able to space the floor. I mean, we've seen him have some games where he hit some threes. So I really like him. At first, I was kind of torn, like, man, is he a 4 or a 5? Now, as the season went on, I mean, he's a lottery pick. I think it's safe to say that he is a top 10 pick. But I know there's some people that still have some concerns. And in the second segment, we are going to talk about why you believe those concerns should be wiped out and eliminated based off of the success of Houston Rockets' Alperen Şengün. We're going to talk about Alperen Şengün's game. We're going to talk about his pre-draft or his pre-NBA scouting report and the similarities between him and Derik Queen. And then in the last segment, we're going to talk about, well, I'm not going to talk about it. James is going to push his agenda, the big picture, why building around Derik Queen is a safe bet. Have you ever checked your bank account and you wondered where in the world did all the money go? I know that just happened to me a couple of days ago. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is very, very easy to lose track. And that is where Monarch Money comes in. Monarch Money is like your personal CFO. It gives you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, your investments, and your spending all in one place. So you stop managing your money and you start building wealth. And with Monarch Money, managing your finances with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts. You can set goals. You can stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, second segment. Let's talk about Alperen Şengün. So I pulled up my scouting notes on Alperen Şengün, and I'll be transparent. I was a big Alperen Şengün fan his draft year. I lived in Turkey, so I was a little bit biased. I was very familiar with him just because I remember seeing him as a youngin playing in Turkey. I watched him at the under 18s. I remember going to that tournament, which was a really loaded tournament. Franz Wagner was in that tournament. Santi Aldama was in the tournament. Alexis Pokashevsky. It was a very, very good tournament. And that's when I first really started paying it. Adembona was another player that was in that tournament. But that's when I first started paying attention to Şengün and the jump he made from the U18s to the next year where he was the MVP of the Turkish League was one of the biggest jumps I've ever seen as far as just like a player progression. So here's what I had about Şengün. Good footwork and touch around the rim, very good feel as a passer, has a little bit of flash and flair to his game when it comes to passing, can handle the ball a little bit, can push the ball up court, very patient in the post, super skilled, excellent hands, very good feel and pace. Loves the drop step post move, has counter moves, is a better athlete than people give him credit for, can score as the roll man, counter moves on top of counter moves, has some Nikola Jokic type post moves, strong lower body, does a good job of establishing low post position, and has counter moves on top of counter moves and a series of head fakes that throws the defenders off. My concerns were at the time that he is a throwback center, not a vertical lob threat, would need to extend his range, lacks vertical pop around the rim, is a below the rim finisher, may struggle versus NBA length. And my comparison for Alperen Şengün was Al Jefferson. Now, looking back at that scouting report, other than the fact that I said that he has a strong lower body, because I think Derik Queen's legs look like a wing. He has the legs of a wing. And Şengün's legs look really heavy. Like sometimes it doesn't even look like he should move the way he moves because he looks like he's got heavy legs. But my scouting report on Alperen Şengün coming into, the 2021 NBA draft?
Yeah.
Sounds very similar to Derik Queen. You can go on NBA Draft Junkies YouTube channel. You can type in Alperen Şengün, and you will see that I did a whole video breakdown where I thought Alperen Şengün was the next Al Jefferson. So with that being said, Şengün has been successful. And he wasn't supposed to be given the keys to the Rockets. Everything was supposed to be built around Jalen Green. And one of the things that I loved about Şengün, I remember on that Rockets Summer League team, one of the most selfish Summer League teams I've ever seen. Who was on that team? Jalen Green, Josh Christopher, Marcus Foster from Creighton. It was so many guys. And I was at Summer League that year that just didn't move the rock. And I remember Şengün getting tired of it, getting the rebound, pushing the ball up the court himself and calling his own number, his own ISO. And I was like, you know what? This guy, he's got what it takes. Now, I knew that he was talented. I mean, he won MVP of the Turkish League as a teenager. But the fact that he was like, they're not giving me the ball in the post. I'm down here working. They don't trust me. All right, I'm going to have to show them I'm running the offense. That's, like I said, that's when I knew that he had something extra needed to succeed in the NBA. With all that being said, and the Houston Rockets were what, the number 2 seed?
Yes.
Şengün was an all-star, right?
Yes.
I mean, I think he was an alternate, but he was an all-star. So with all that being said, why are people still slow? I mean, they're coming along, but why are people still a little slow to fall in love with Derik Queen?
Let me just read briefly what I have about Derik Queen. Skill, footwork, can pass, older freshman, that doesn't, apply to Şengün, below the rim for the most part, handle, uses both hands around the basket. He rebounds. He has grab and go talent. Very good pass. That sounds like Şengün. So again, I think that teams, fans, front offices, whatever, you see what has worked before and you say, I got to go duplicate that. And I get it. It's a copycat league. Ralph is always talking about you got to copy the right cat. I get it. I understand. But sometimes a talent comes around and you got to say, you know what? I have to build around what he does best. And I feel like that's what the Rockets obviously made that choice, running everything through Şengün this year. You see the success that they're having. I think a smart team will do the same thing with Derik Queen. Let's not focus on what he's not. Let's focus on what he is and say, you know what, while he may have deficiencies in defense, let's build a team around him like the Rockets have done to bring out his best talents, especially this time of the year, right, Rafa? You see teams, okay, and the conversation is, can this guy that we're drafting play in the playoffs? And at one point, this time last year when the Rockets were struggling, or 2 years ago when the Rockets were struggling, the questions were, can Alperen Şengün play in the playoffs? And the questions are clearly being answered right now. Obviously, he can play in the playoffs. And you couldn't ask for a tougher matchup for a big who is supposed to not be a rim protector, slow-footed, all those things. You get the worst matchup ever if that's what your defensive skill set is in Steph Curry, because guess what? You got to extend out to half court because that's one of the goats right there. And Şengün, the Rockets, they're doing their job. So I feel like, again, is Queen an anchor? No. But I also think, in a sense, having an anchor, in quotes, is overrated, because what does it matter if you have an anchor if 1 through 4 can't defend? So you're better off building 1 through 5 being able to defend versus having one guy able to defend. Look at the difference between Utah Jazz, Rudy Gay. No disrespect to my Utah Jazz followers. I see I've been picking up a lot of y'all because it's that time of the year for you guys again. But no disrespect to y'all, but you see what Rudy Gay looks like on defense in space when he has to guard
Rudy Gobert
this year. Huh?
Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, excuse me, Rudy Gobert. You see what it looks like this year when he's not making up for Joe Ingles. He's not making up for Donovan Mitchell. He's not making up for Royce O'Neal.
Still making up for Mike Conley.
He's still making up for Mike Conley. But at the same time this year, now you got Anthony Edwards who's going to defend. You got Jaden McDaniels who's going to defend. Yeah, OG Mike Conley's still out there. But also Julius Randle, he can move his feet. And, I'm not the biggest Rudy Gobert fan, but he was good in isolation the other night against Luka. I mean, there's some highlight plays, but that's Luka. It's going to happen. But I say that to say this. The teams, Boston, those teams that defend, everybody defends, you have success. When you're trying to rely on one guy to clean up the sins of others, you ask him to be Jesus, and you just can't do that in the NBA.
I will say this much. When I compare my Derik Queen notes to Şengün notes, I think that at the same stages in their career, Queen is a better shooter, but I think Şengün just has more like post moves and counter and work on the block.
I think
Şengün is a better low post scorer as far as, hey, give me the ball on the post and make something happen. While I think Queen is probably a little bit better facing up.
Yes.
I mean, Şengün can't put the ball on the floor in space. I mean, he's got handles.
Yes.
And he got ISO game, but I just feel like Şengün better on the block, Queen better face up at the same stages of their career. But with that being said, I do think that this is a good year to be Derik Queen because of the Rocket success. It's a copycat league. And there's nothing wrong with being a copycat as long as you copy the right cat. But I also feel like if it were a situation where Şengün was getting ran off the floor, because that was like you said, that was the chatter. Can Şengün play in the playoffs? Can he defend in the playoffs? If he were getting picked apart and Golden State was up 2-0 right now, then I think some of the concerns with Derik Queen would grow louder. But Şengün is giving Draymond work. Şengün is giving Kevin Looney work. Series is tied 1-1. Şengün is proving that he can play in the playoffs, and he's doing it on a young team that is playing a veteran. Even though the Rockets were the 2 seed and the Warriors were the 7 seed. I don't keep up with the lines, but I imagine most people are probably believing that the Warriors are going to win that series. So I think this is a good year to be Şengün. All right, up next, we're going to talk about the big picture. James is going to lay out his blueprint on how to build around Derik Queen to maximize his strength. All right, last segment. So let's talk about this blueprint. I know you had mentioned that you need to build a defensive team around Şengün in a sense. I think you left off one key point of the Rockets' success. They got a defensive-minded coach, like the personality of the coach to match the defensive-minded players. I think that is a big part of Houston's success. I mean, it's only 1-1. Who knows what's going to happen this series? I mean, that first game was ugly. The first game.
Man, but
the playoffs have been ugly. I mean,
it was ugly, but they held Golden State to 95 points.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, but let me cook real quick, Ralph. So, Şengün, first playoff, 21 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists per game. Advanced stats say he averages 12 potential assists per game. And I want to say he's only averaging 4 because that first game, they only scored 85 points. Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, they were building houses that first game. Jalen Green, he bounced back. Shout out to Jalen Green, man. I wanted to get off on a tangent, and I know that the Ignite program, G League Ignite, they take a lot of, slander for whatever reason. And I think that was a big game for Jalen Green for just himself but that's a whole different podcast. But Şengün, he has the second best defensive rating on the Rockets team. It's a 2-game sample, but the second best defensive rating on the Rockets team in the playoffs right now. The only person who has a better defensive rating is Cam Whitmore, who played garbage minutes against what was left of the Warriors the other night. Now, tell me this, Ralph. He has the second best defensive rating. What if I told you Şengün hasn't blocked a single shot yet? Blocking shots, protecting the rim is important. But again, when you have 5 guys scrambling and doing some hacking, let's be honest, it's a team effort. And he hasn't blocked a shot partially because it's twofold. Golden State, they shoot a lot of jumpers. And also, he's not always defending. They're doing a good job of moving him around in space. So instead of him guarding Draymond and having Steph just put him in hell, because Steph does that to everybody. They're moving around. He's guarding Moses Moody. He's guarding Jimmy Butler. He's guarding, basically, they're trying to put him in as few pick and roll action as possible. But with that said, when he is in pick and roll, he is hedging. He is flying out. He is recovering. And you're saying, you know what? The ball's not in Steph's hands. The ball's not in Jimmy Butler's hands. I got to close out to Quinn Post, who made shots last game. I got to close out to Moses Moody. I got to close out to Podziemski. Any team would tell you, you know what? If options 3, 4, and 5 are taking semi-contested or contested jumpers, you'll live with them because the stars are not taking those shots. And again, Synergy says against the Warriors, he is holding defenders to 33% shooting in spot ups. You'll take that. That's below league average. Again, those are all going to be jumpers. So I feel like Şengün, we get out this mode of saying, hey, we got to play, we got to have an anchor. There's only like 3 anchors in the NBA, in my opinion, maybe more than 3, but there are only a handful of anchors. But if you can build around him with toolsy 6'7", 6'8", 6'8" guys, 6'9" guys, like the Rockets have done with Şengün, you can switch stuff and you can compete. And then, like you mentioned before, it's a defensive mindset. Because Ime has the reputation of being a defensive-minded coach, Dylan Brooks is going to get to play with 9 fouls, right? 9 fouls. I mean, they're not going to call every one of them. Fred VanVleet gets to grab.
I'm going to break that down for the listener. I've actually heard NBA players tell me this. I've had an NBA player tell me and he was referring to Tony Allen, but he mentioned other guys that have that reputation as a defender. He was like, once you're considered a defender, you can foul all day because they believe you're just being you. You're just playing good defense. It's almost like Draymond Green in a sense.
Yeah, he gets 4
He
techs.
should have he should have a tech every single game, but because he's established himself,
he should have a tech every single quarter.
he gets more leeway, and then once he gets that first tech, man, it's like the refs don't want to eject him unless he like pushes him. So with that being said, you're saying that because of Udoka's reputation and a guy like Dylan Brooks, they get the opportunity to foul. And then I actually spoke to an NBA coach earlier today. He was talking about the playoffs. He said, yes, the referees are calling touch fouls with your hands. But he was like, when it comes to bodying, they are allowing guys to get physical and body up and bump.
It's an old head's dream out there, man. Listen, Steph Curry's my favorite player probably all the time. They hugging this man, and they're not calling any fouls. So I say that to say this. Queen has the IQ, the hands to be a good defender, all things considered. Is he going to be your shot blocker? No, not in the sense where he's just going to play drop and you just funnel guys to him. No, but I do believe that he has the footwork and ability to defend in space in spurts. If you follow me on Twitter, I queued up a good 2-minute propaganda video showing him defending in space. Hands up, the feet can move. So I'm saying this, he should be able to show. I'm saying if you build a defensive team and not rely on one guy, and you get these athletes out there, you can move him around in different spots, and he won't kill you on defense. And I feel like, again, yes, it's 2 games, but Şengün is leading the Rockets in minutes. He's not being played off the floor in what is the worst possible matchup for a big in the NBA, which is Steph Curry. Now, again, is he guarding every pick and roll? No. But the Rockets are finding ways to move. And the Rockets are playing 2 bigs at times, too. And we talked about it. I talked about the first segment. Queen comes from a 2-big system at Maryland. And it's not just him spacing the floor and shooting threes. Queen takes guards off the dribble. So I feel like there you guys go. This should help you realize that you can play Queen. He's not going to be the liability that people think he is if, obviously he plays up to his talent level.
All right, here's the question for you, though.
Okay.
Şengün wasn't given the keys from day one. We know that. I've even seen some comparisons. Leaf made a comparison to Sabonis. Sabonis wasn't given the keys from day one. What does the best situation look like for Derik Queen based off the teams that are going to be in the lottery? That's the part where I have a hard time finding out the best situation to maximize.
So with that being said, you don't necessarily have to have the keys. I'm saying you don't need to put him in the dunker spot, and he doesn't always have to be the roll man. But at the same time, he's going to have success in the short roll because I believe he's a very good passer. And I've mentioned it before. I think a great spot for him where you look at least in theory, as far as like tall, rangy athletes who can do a little bit of everything. And before I mention this team, Jalen Green's reputation was not that of a defender coming out of the G League, right? Now, athleticism to be able to defend, absolutely. No question about that. But he even got benched at times this year for not playing defense. He's playing as good as defense as he possibly can. It's just, you got to guard Steph. He's going to make shots that no one else in the history of ever is going to make besides him. I've mentioned it before. I like Derik Queen in Toronto. Now, Scotty Barnes, 6'9", 6'10", good long arms. He fits the defensive mold, right? Brandon Ingram, he's had his ups and downs on defense, but he has the physical tools to be able to defend. RJ Barrett, again, physical tools to be able to defend. And then you got Quickly, who's a smaller, he's about 6'2", 6'3". But I'm saying you have a rotation of wings, and then you also got Jacoby Walter off the bench. who could, if you coach them up, if they buy in, it could work. Where those guys, Queen, Ingram, R.J. Barrett, and who else did I say? Scotty Barnes. They could switch 2 through 5, similar to what Houston does right now. But again, that's a mindset thing. But from a physical tools, it fits there to me.
All right, last question. As of today, the Raptors are picking 7. If you had to choose between Common Maliwauch or Derik Queen at 7, which direction are you going?
I'm going with Queen, man. I like what Queen brings to the table. I think your run and dunk big is very much reliant on your point guard. And while I do think Quickly is a good playmaker, are you getting the most out of Maliwauch in that situation? I don't know. I feel like you can be switchable. You can get something on offense that is harder to game plan with Queen than it is with Maliwauch. And like I mentioned before, the difference between Derek Lively without Luka versus with Luka is night and day. Yeah, and that's a run and jump big.
Ask Jackson Hayes.
Jackson.
He's not playing a whole lot of minutes, but he looks better with Luka on the team. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. James had an agenda to push, and his agenda was Derik Queen. Teams, do not overthink it. Build around him, and you have something there. Again, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Once again, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Also, check out the Locked On newsletter at lockedondaily.com. Hopefully everyone has a good weekend. I will be in Phoenix at the Nike EYBL, getting my scouting on for the 2027 and 28 NBA draft. I'm out.